The real life and death drama of the mediated hostage for ceasefire deal is continuing. Just last night, Israelis celebrated the agreement announced by the current and incoming US presidents and then officially proclaimed by the Qatari Prime Minister in Doha. The Israeli cabinet is due to consider and approve the agreement okayed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But this morning, the Prime Minister's office issued a statement saying that Hamas is backtracking on understandings and preventing an agreement. The Prime Minister said the government will not meet until the matters are clarified. The statement went on to say that Hamas was backtracking on explicit understandings agreed upon with mediators in what is called a last-minute attempt at extortion. The main point of disagreement is the identities of the Palestinian security prisoners to be released as part of the deal. By agreement, Israel has veto power over some of the prisoners. Hamas has been publishing names of those it says will be released. The Prime Minister said the cabinet meeting will be held after mediators announced that Hamas has agreed to all details of the agreement. At the moment, the general impression is that the dispute will be dealt with by mediators and the cabinet will meet on time for the ceasefire and hostage exchange to get underway as planned this Sunday. The statement concluded Israel will not set a date for a cabinet or government meeting after assurances are received from mediators that Hamas has approved all details of the agreement. And after tense final days of negotiations, the mediated hostage for ceasefire agreement was officially declared last night by the Prime Minister of Qatar. Earlier announcements by President Biden and President-elect Donald Trump were confirmed by the Prime Minister's office, and the ceasefire deal in Gaza is about to begin. We get more from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The long-anticipated day has come. After more than 15 months of war, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a hostages for ceasefire deal. Officials from both sides confirmed the agreement, which is due to begin on Sunday. The mediated deal was confirmed at a Doha press conference by the Prime Minister of Qatar.
يسر دولة قطر وجمهورية مصر العربية والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية الإعلان عن نجاح جهود الوساطة المشتركة بوصول طرفي النزاع في قطاع غزة إلى اتفاق بشأن تبادل الأسرى والرهائن والعودة إلى الهدوء المستدام وصولا لوقف دائم لإطلاق النار بين الجانبين. بالإضافة إلى إيصال كميات مكثفة من المساعدات الإنسانية والإغاثية للأشقاء الفلسطينيين في قطاع غزة.
The announcement from Doha came as Hamas announced its official approval, while at the same time saying the terror would continue.
قد شكلت معركة طوفان الأقصى منعطفا مهما في تاريخ قضيتنا ومراحل مقاومة شعبنا العظيم وستستمر آثار هذه المعركة.
The complex agreement has yet to be published and includes a 6-week initial ceasefire phase. This phase includes the release of the first 3 Israeli hostages on Sunday, when the agreement officially goes into effect. 33 hostages are due to be released on the first 42 days of the ceasefire, along with hundreds of security prisoners. Prime Minister Netanyahu made separate calls to both Prime Minister Biden and President-elect Trump to thank them for their help in securing the agreement. The announcement from the PMO was the first public confirmation by Israel that the agreement had been reached. Earlier, President Biden said that Israeli pressure on Hamas and U.S.-backed pressure weakening the Iran-backed axis of resistance led the terror group to agree to the deal.
I can announce a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. For more than 15 months of conflict, more than 15 months of terror, for the hostages, their families, the Israeli people, more than 15 months of suffering by the innocent people of Gaza. Fighting in Gaza will stop, and soon the hostages will return home to their families. The elements of this deal were what I laid out in detail this past May, which was embraced by countries around the world and endorsed overwhelmingly by the UN Security Council.
President-elect Trump posted that the agreement could only have been reached because of his election as president. Trump said it signaled to the entire world that my administration would seek peace and negotiate deals.
There are mixed emotions when it comes to this hostage deal, which has still not yet been sealed by the Israeli government. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian is live in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv with the latest. Shosh, can you tell us how people are feeling about the upcoming deal?
Yeah, so of course there's mixed emotions. We've been nonstop reporting about this upcoming deal. Families, of course, are in support of getting their loved ones home, but other Israelis are concerned about the security here in Israel and what it could mean for the future. The biggest thing for these families is making sure that every single last hostage comes out, whether alive or whether their bodies come out, and are prepared for burial here in Israel. Right now we're seeing that, of course, this is a phased deal. What we saw, which is very similar to the deal in November of 2023, hostages would come out in different phases. The same thing is what we're hearing now. But this time, hostage families say we need every single hostage part of the phase to come out. Like we said, they just want every single last person to come out. One of the families of one of the hostages whose bodies is still in Gaza right now, Tal Haimi, his cousin, said today, of course, this is a hard deal with the amount of prisoners that could be released. But they said that this is the consequence of what happened on October 7th. And every single last hostage needs to come out. Now, part of being a reporter is you make relationships with the families of hostages. Just yesterday, I called one of the hostage families, Ron Braslavsky, his cousin, who's actually based in New Jersey, and I spoke with him, and I called him, and I said, did you hear the news that there is an incoming deal? And he said, really? I had no idea. Are you sure? And I said, Qatar announced that it is likely going to be implemented on Sunday. And so that is what we're hearing. Families are optimistic. He told me they're optimistic, but cautiously optimistic, because over and over again we've seen Hamas renege, pull back, have more demands. And so we're constantly following all of the news here. Just stick with ILTV. Ariel, I'll send it back to you.
The long-awaited Israel-Hamas hostage deal is now moving forward, offering a carefully planned roadmap to bring 33 hostages, both living and dead, home and ease tensions in Gaza. Now let's break down how this complex agreement will unfold. Starting on Sunday, the first phase begins with the release of hostages. Over the course of 6 weeks, 33 hostages will be released, with women and children having priority, followed by female soldiers and men over 50. Now 3 hostages per week are expected to return. By the end of the first phase, all female prisoners and male prisoners under 19 held since October 7th will be released. In exchange, Israel will release Palestinian security prisoners. For each civilian hostage, 30 prisoners will be freed, and for each female soldier, 50 prisoners will be freed. In total, between 990 and 1,650 detainees are expected to be freed, including some convicted terrorists serving murder sentences. During this time, a 6-week ceasefire will remain in place. The IDF will withdraw from central Gaza and will also reduce its presence in specific areas such as the Philadelphia and Netzarim corridors. Refugees from the south of Gaza will be allowed to return north in stages. The Rafah border crossing will also reopen within the first week, enabling the flow of humanitarian aid under Egyptian and Qatari oversight. Negotiations for the next phase of the deal will begin on day 16. This phase focuses on releasing the remaining hostages and achieving a permanent ceasefire, with Qatar, Egypt, and the US acting as guarantors. Now, it's important to note some unresolved tensions, such as the release of all remaining hostages, the complete IDF withdrawal from the Philadelphia corridor, and a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Now, the operation to implement this agreement, named Wings of Freedom, represents a significant step forward. By the end of this week, families of the hostages and the international community will be watching closely to ensure this complex deal unfolds as planned.
Moving to Israel marks the beginning of a new chapter, and Pitaro Hecht helps you make it truly yours. Transform your home with interiors that blend style, comfort, and timeless design, from luxurious living spaces to thoughtful details. With high-quality craftsmanship at great value, we create spaces where memories are made. For your new life in Israel, choose Pitaro Hecht, where your home begins.
As the hostage deal is finalized, there are some questions around the deal's fairness, the prisoners who are involved, and even who deserves credit. Joining me now in the studio is ILTV Executive Editor Mayan Hoffman to help analyze the deal and its broader impact. Mayan, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So, despite some last-minute complications, it seems as though the hostage deal will go through. Is this truly a good deal?
Look, Ariela, there are a lot of complications with the deal, and I mean, there are several folds. I mean, the first is important is that we are getting 98 hostages, hopefully, or at least some of the 98 hostages back home. That's one. So that is a good thing. However, we have to remember that in exchange, just like in past deals, we are going to be giving a number of prisoners to Hamas. We're going to let them free from our prisons. These are prisoners with blood on their hands, life sentences, who have murdered Israelis. In addition, we are not done in Gaza. You've seen soldiers dying every day. Rockets are still coming out of the sky and targeting southern Israel. How can these people come home? And keep in mind that we are also planning, not in phase one, but over time, if this continues, to give back the Rafah crossing, to give back the Philadelphia corridor, or at least to pull back our soldiers from there. Now, we saw what happened in the past when we were not monitoring those areas with our own IDF forces, when Israel was not taking care of itself. We got October 7th. Those are the crossings where the weapons and the ammunitions and all of the materials to build the underground tunnel system are coming through. So we really have to understand that we need the hostages home, but this is not necessarily safe in the long term for the state of Israel.
So tell me more about some of the prisoners who will be released.
Okay, so that's a really important question, okay? You know, here's the deal. It's one civilian for every 30 or so prisoners. And when it comes to soldiers, you're talking at around 50 plus some extra. And again, I just want to give you, some context. Now, these are not Nukhba terrorists, we've said. These meaning people who have also took part in October 7th. But these are prisoners who have done crimes against Israelis that are extremely severe. Many of them have murdered, innocent civilians in their homes, on roads. And we're talking about in total around 2,000. The most important thing to keep in mind when we talk about a prisoner exchange is what happened in 2011. We exchanged for Gilad Shalit over 1,000 prisoners. Now, who was one of them? Yahya Sinwar. And that is the man who was the mastermind, we've since eliminated him, behind October 7th. So that is the risk that we run when we do this prisoner exchange.
I mean, so why would Israel sign this deal?
I mean, I think that's a very obvious answer, if I can tell you the truth. I mean, what that is that we need to get our hostages home. You know, here's the thing. We collective as a society need to see at least whoever is alive cross, everybody, but cross the thresholds and come back to Israel for us to collectively heal. We need it for unity. We need it for trust that if something, God forbid, happens to our people, that they will be saved. Also, keep in mind the Jewish value, every life is worth a world, we say in Judaism. And it is the biggest mitzvah to do, we call returning the hostages. So we must do this for our people, despite all the risks that I just named.
Absolutely. Now, both Biden and Trump have claimed credit for this. So who truly deserves the applause?
Okay, well, not surprising that everybody wants to take credit for this deal. And, but the reality is, and we know it came out actually even today on CNN, is that from the first few days that Trump was elected, he met with Biden, and Biden actually asked him right away to please have his team take part in the negotiations to help to move it forward. We know that Steve Witkoff was there and present for some of this, alongside, of course, McGurk, who's Biden's negotiator. What the roles were a little bit different. McGurk was meant to do more of the formalization and the how to structure the deal, while the Trump team was actually meant to put pressure. Now, everybody says, the minute Trump got into office, they said, wow, there's going to be, people were afraid of Trump, and he made his comments starting back in early December about Hamas will have hell to pay if 100 hostages do not come home. Now, of course, 98. I will say that I don't believe Hamas is fearful of Donald Trump. The terrorists are not playing into the hands. But there are two parties that are, and they are actually Israel and Qatar. Netanyahu, not that he's been stalling the deal. There were some comments made by the Biden administration, but certainly by and large, the deals have not gone through because of Hamas. But on the other hand, Netanyahu knows there's a deadline now, January 20th, and the Israeli team is much more committed because he will need Trump for the next 4 years to accomplish his goals. At the same time, Qatar, the premier of Qatar is very close with Trump, feels that he needs to try to get this forward for him as well, wants to make sure that he looks like he's working with Trump in order to know that, again, in the next administration, he will get what he wants out of Trump. Now, with that, I actually want to say that the real winner here is not Biden, and it is not Trump, it is actually Israel. The reason that Hamas gave into this deal in the end is because of what we managed to do in Lebanon, the destruction against Hezbollah, the defeat against Iran when we retaliated against their strike. What we have done in the region has shown finally, after the tragedy of October 7th, that brought up a lot of questions as to whether or not Israel was the superpower that people thought we were. Now they know we are. They know you don't mess with Israel. And therefore, Hamas, I think, eventually said, we better get this deal done, or we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Right. Several complex factors, but good to see some momentum finally. Mayan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
It's day 468 of the war in Gaza, and the ceasefire is due to begin on Sunday, but the fighting is still ongoing. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz reports.
There are no signs that fighting in Gaza will end before Sunday's start of the ceasefire. This morning, rocket sirens sounded in near the Gaza border. The IDF confirmed that a Hamas rocket had fallen in an open area without causing damage. The IDF attacked dozens of terror targets throughout the Gaza Strip overnight. The army said the focus was on key concentrations of Hamas and Islamic Jihad gunmen. The army will continue to strike any and all threats up to the moment of the ceasefire and will respond firmly against any terror infractions. The army is also involved in arrangements being made for the receipt of the hostages and redeployments that will be made of IDF forces in Gaza as required by the ceasefire deal. There were celebrations in many areas of Gaza as the coming truce was announced. In Khan Yunis, crowds took to the streets to celebrate what they are hoping will be an end to the war. The 6-week initial ceasefire phase would include a pause in fighting, as well as the entry of hundreds of trucks filled with humanitarian aid for Gazan civilians.
Prime Minister Netanyahu faces mounting coalition tensions over the proposed hostage for ceasefire deal, with key allies threatening to withdraw support. More from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to face opposition from members of his own coalition over the signing of the proposed hostage for ceasefire deal. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich convened his party Thursday morning in Jerusalem to discuss the deal and determine whether to withdraw from the government if it is approved. As of press time, no official announcement had been made. However, the previous evening, Smotrich released a statement emphasizing that a clear condition for his party remaining in the government would be an assurance that Israel would resume fighting in Gaza after all the hostages are released, and that Hamas would be dismantled, consistent with the original goals of the war. Smotrich is facing pressure from National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who has publicly criticized the deal, calling it terrible, and urged Smotrich to agree to leave the government if the agreement goes through. Together, their two parties hold 13 Knesset seats, enough to destabilize Netanyahu's coalition if they were to withdraw. The deal is expected to pass even if Ben-Gvir and Smotrich vote against it. They are the only representatives from their parties on the 11-member National Security Cabinet and account for just 6 of the 33 seats in the coalition government. President Isaac Herzog addressed the cabinet last night, urging them to support the agreement. Meanwhile, the ultra-Orthodox ministers have also expressed their support for the deal. Housing Minister Yitzhak Goldknopf of the United Torah Judaism Party stated that saving a life takes precedent over even the entire Torah, and he confirmed he would vote in favor. Similarly, Health Minister Uriel Busso of Shas voiced his support, assuring that the health system is prepared to assist the victims.
Now let's check back in with ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian, who is live in Hostage Square, bringing us updates on the environment in Tel Aviv regarding this deal. Shosh, can you tell us what's new and what the families of hostages are saying?
Yeah, so Ariella, of course, the environment is heavy here in Hostage Square. We've heard mixed feelings about the upcoming deal right now that's pending, and so many people are looking forward to it, but of course they have their concerns. Here in Hostage Square, there's still a lot of tourists that are coming through, trying to understand the lay of the land. There are some families that are in the tents that you can see behind me, and we're going to step over here. We actually have somebody who's a tourist himself. His name is Brian Jacobs, and he is here with his family. This is his first time in Hostage Square. Can you tell us what it's like being here, knowing that there is a deal that's looming to get these hostages out?
Yeah, Shosh, this is extremely emotional, very moving, unbelievable situation here in Hostage Square. Just you can't fathom what the people are going through here for so many days. And just to see people come together in this square is really special and meaningful.
Mm-hmm. What is it like for you to be here in Israel? You told me you haven't been to Israel in about 2 years. You're with your family. And knowing that a deal could be coming soon. It's been more than a year. These hostages have been in captivity. But for you to be here, maybe on Sunday these hostages will start to come out. What's it like to be here during that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just fortunate timing. We came to visit our son who's here for the year studying. And we got off the plane yesterday afternoon and heard some really good news about a deal in place. And just walking through the airport, seeing all the signs of the hostages, we knew we had to come here just to feel it, feel the emotions, and to be here and hopefully, continue throughout the weekend to see the hostages return. It's just fortunate timing, and we would love to see all the hostages returned, of course, and just, to see a return of, innocent people who were taken captive.
Mm-hmm. As an American, like I said, this is your first time back in Israel since the war started. Talk to me about what it was like living in New Jersey, now coming here. Is it a sense of relief for you to be back here in Israel?
Yeah, it's always a great feeling to be here and show support for Israel and show support for the Jewish people. You really don't get that true feeling when you're in America, in New York, New Jersey. When you're here, you really feel it. You just see the signs everywhere. You go to a restaurant and people are talking about it, and you go into a little store, a little shop, and you see signs, bring them home. You see faces of hostages everywhere. And the whole nation here, the whole country is truly feeling it. It's not just the families. It's not just, people connected with the hostages, but it's truly everyone that lives here, that comes and visits here, that travels through Israel. You just feel it all.
Thank you so much for sharing. As you can see, it's emotional for a lot of people that come here for the first time. A lot of people visiting and seeing what it's like, the art exhibits, the photos of all of the hostages that are still in captivity. There's 98 people that are still in Hamas captivity. And we're going to continue to follow all of this on ILTV. Ariella, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Shosh. Definitely a monumental time to be in Israel. Now, world leaders are responding to the ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. The international community widely welcomed the agreement and called for the ceasefire to become a permanent end to the war. ILTV's Deborah Klein reports.
The ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas has prompted a wave of international reactions. Leaders from around the globe have expressed both relief and calls for continued action to stabilize the region. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen both highlighted the agreement's potential to alleviate suffering and urged swift delivery of humanitarian aid. They also called for this moment to pave the way toward lasting peace in the region. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer both acknowledged the human cost of the conflict. Scholz underscored the need for dignified treatment of hostages and the deceased, while Starmer emphasized the necessity of a two-state solution to ensure long-term security for both Israelis and Palestinians. Not all reactions were positive. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps hailed the ceasefire and hostage deal as a, quote, great victory for Palestinians and a, quote, bigger defeat for Israel. Their statement, shared by the semi-official Tasnim news agency, framed the ceasefire as evidence of Israel's weakness. Beyond the diplomatic responses, aid organizations are mobilizing to deliver essential supplies to Gaza, where the humanitarian crisis has reached critical levels. This global response underscores the collective hope for peace, while recognizing the challenges that still remain. The coming days will be pivotal in transforming this agreement into meaningful progress for the region.
And let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow we should be seeing cloudy skies and cool weather, reaching highs of around 19 degrees Celsius or 67 degrees Fahrenheit. And cloudy conditions will remain for the rest of the weekend. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ariel El-Khiani. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.